All right, hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. This is your afternoon tropical update. We are back today talking once again about Tropical Storm Bret and its new friend, Tropical Depression 4. Now, my last video, I said I probably wasn't going to roll another video on Bret and didn't really plan to, but we do have TD4 following Bret, and while that's also not much of a threat to the eastern United States, it does look ominous if you look at the cone and you don't really pay close attention. So we're going to talk through it, make sure people are, well aware that this isn't anything to worry about, and anyone that's stomping their feet and acting like it's a big deal, they shouldn't be. But while we're here, why not run through both storms and take a look at the latest? So we are looking at a very just crazy weather pattern across the whole basin, across the U.S. Period. We have a giant heat dome building over Texas, which is going to bring them weeks of ridiculous temperatures. It could very well rival, if not outright trounce, the 1980 heat wave. There's been severe storms. There was a major tornado in Texas last night. You have all this ridiculous moisture down in the Western Caribbean being pulled up, a big upper low that just will not go anywhere, and you have an African wave train in the month of June. Folks, it is some crazy times in the weather right now, and the fact that we're tracking two storms in the MDR region in the month of June is still ridiculous. So, quick update here. National Hurricane Center's latest advisories. This is their current map showing Tropical Storm Bret here now approaching the Antilles, moving in towards the Caribbean at a pretty good clip to the west at 16 miles an hour. And then TD4, which formed this morning, is cruising along behind him. So, quick look at Bret. Latest in National Hurricane Center, a hurricane watch and a tropical storm warning are in effect for most of the Antilles. This is Barbados, St. Lucia, Dominica, etc., etc. You can go to the public advisory and look at all the different islands. I'm not going to sit here and read them all off. But all the Antilles are under the threat of a tropical storm as Bret does move through. It's still packing winds at 65 miles an hour this afternoon. And although it's kind of raggy looking, it definitely can still pack a punch, especially adding that 16-mile-an-hour forward speed. Current satellite presentation of Bret is, it's not the worst tropical storm ever, but it's definitely having a rough time. The center of circulation is somewhere near the front, almost like right about here, and most of the convection is heavily displaced off to the north and east. So this is down shear of the shear mean line. You can see all these high clouds streaming out and away, indicating an upper trough, imparting a pretty healthy amount of wind shear on the storm, and that's what's pushing those thunderstorms back away from the low-level center going forward. But the thunderstorms, instead of following the low-level center and wrapping around it, are instead being blown backwards in respect to where the storm is actually physically moving, which is to the west, but the thunderstorms leaning back to the east, and the low-level center trying to run away. So this is going to move over the islands pretty quick tonight. It will be a gusty squall, especially again on the north end. If your center's right here and it comes across, anyone on the north side, they get 50, 60 mile an hour winds plus 10 or 15 miles an hour because of the forward speed. So they could definitely get some hurricane force wind gusts. That would not shock me as these heavier thunderstorms go through. But this will not be a long-lived event, and heavy rainfall not too much of a threat because of how fast it's moving and the fact that it just doesn't have a lot of thunderstorm activity. So, I don't want to downplay that it's not going to be anything, but these islands have certainly seen worse, and things do not look good for Bret in the future. This is the intensity guidance uniformly showing a quick decline. This is within 24 hours right here on this line and 48 hours on this line. You can see by 48 hours, about half the models, including the Hurricane Center's official forecast, does have Bret below tropical storm status. The GFS and European models both agree. Bret moves through and stays well down into the west, and most of them weaken the storm significantly in the Caribbean in a day or two. This is all because of some very powerful upper level wind shear. We have a strong upper trough over the Caribbean and just blasting all through the region. This is also in response to the upper level pattern over the U.S., the big trough. So, long story short, there are some very strong atmospheric winds in the Caribbean. Bret moves in and just is not going to be able to hold up in the face of all that. It's struggling right now, and this is set for Friday. So if we go back to today, you can see Bret is just starting to get in on that wind shear, and it's only going to pick up in the coming days. So the Hurricane Center's official forecast does dissipate Bret, or at least makes it a tropical depression by Saturday evening, and dissipates it completely by Sunday. The remnants could eventually move across Central America and reform in the Eastern Pacific, so we'll watch for that. But this would very likely be a different storm. It would not likely be Bret, because if it dissipates way out here, it won't be named over in the Eastern Pacific. It would have to somewhat survive the trek across and into the other basin to keep its name, in case you were wondering, which I'm sure you weren't. All right, so we're going to move right along to Tropical Depression 4. This is one following Brett. Looks curiously like Brett, doesn't it? But the big difference here is that TD4 actually is weighted off to the east. So the center of circulation is right about here, and all the thunderstorms are hanging out on the east side of this storm. That's because this storm is actually under the influence of some upper level westerly shear. There's a kind of a elongated belt of a higher height center over the tropics right here, and this rotation is to the west, so this is kind of pushing a westerly wind shear, which is also very unusual for June, as we just keep adding on to that bill. And there's also some drier air in the vicinity of the storm too. It's got enough mid-level moisture, but there's some low-level, drier air sneaking in, so you kind of have this combination to where you have a partially exposed storm. Hurricane Center did not have enough evidence to upgrade this to a tropical storm just yet, but is tracking over decently warm water, and despite the wind shear, it looks like it will become Tropical Storm Cindy here sooner than later, which should be the fourth named storm of the 2023 hurricane season. Latest from National Hurricane Center is what I want to get to on this storm. This is again TD4, or what's going to be Cindy pretty soon. Forecast to become a tropical storm, kind of similar to Brett, getting up in that 50, 65 mile-an-hour range. And the future cone does look a little ominous. You look and you say, okay, well, if this keeps going, but it's similar to Brett in that you have this cone moving west, but you don't continue it with your mind, because once again, the Hurricane Center also forecasting TD4 to hit some pretty rough wind shear near the Bahamas. You can see they have this back to a tropical depression by early next week, and TD4 is going to meet sort of a similar fate as Brett. The Hurricane Center tracks the statistical dynamical models in very good agreement of a northward turn, unlike Brett, who stayed to the west. It looks like TD4 is going to pull northward of the islands, and the confidence is pretty decent that the islands are going to be spared a second hit. This also jives well with both the European and GFS ensembles. You can see almost none of them are bringing this any further south than the islands, so without an exception or two, it looks like this is going to push north, and the future track does have this moving into some pretty hostile wind shear as well. This is the GFS 500 millibar chart. We still have our big squishy omega block with our trough and our big low sitting here. And we have this high pressure cell over the greater Antilles right now. This is what's forcing Brett down to the west and keeping that away from us. That high sort of retrogrades, and then it's hard to see because the storm is so weak, but this is kind of where 4 or Cindy would be, coming on the backside of a smaller high. She rides in like this, but you still have a general trough over the eastern U.S., and this is going to, while it's causing all kinds of problems for the East Coast in terms of weather and thunderstorms, this will keep, the storms away. This is kind of like a fly swatter. It just smacks them away. Just get lost. Storms that typically hit the U.S. will go under a high pressure ridge, and then they'll come up and hit, something like this typically. But when the high is way over here, the storm just follows along the backside of it, and it gets sucked up by this trough. So the trough comes in and picks up 4, and this is also going to be imparting a huge amount of wind shear, as you see, go into Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, which is roughly where the storm is going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, is around the Bahamas. You see on the Hurricane Center's official forecast, 4 would be somewhere around here, and that is just a monster trough coming to get it, and you have your big heat dome over Texas, feeding into that. So it is very, very, very likely that TD4 will get sucked up by that big old trough and get up out of our hair as well. So right now, it does not appear that 4 or Brett are going to have any impact on the eastern U.S. The storm's going to dissipate. Brett's going to dissipate. We're going to get some Eastern Pacific action. That side of the basin will finally kick off, and we'll have plenty of storms and stuff to watch across the eastern U.S. and central U.S. But tropics are not going to be the biggest concern. We do have one or two more waves behind these two. We'll still watch. But again, the Looney Tunes weather pattern over us is just not going to let any of these storms get through right now. So there's nothing to worry about. These storms are not going to be a threat. But again, if you're in the Antilles, hunker down tonight. It's going to be a gusty, squally night. Our friend here should ride north of you, and then they both disappear, and no one's talking about it by next week. So that's what I got for you guys tonight on your latest tropical update. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.